All right. Good morning, everyone, once again. Thank you once again for joining. And just so we don't take your time, because we know it's a very busy day, being a Wednesday morning. And happy new month to everyone. Please, with your thumbs up, can you confirm if you can hear me? I just want to get the reactions, please. All right. Thank you very much, Kenny. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome, everybody. Welcome to July and welcome to the third edition of the webinar series on energizing sustainability. My name is Alice Adeniyi, and on behalf of Budget Foundation and the Resource Justice Network, I will be moderating the session for today on from advocacy to actions, how civil society organizations can be drivers of community energy. So we are very glad that you've joined us today. Before we get started, so I'll just go through a few housekeeping rules, which you are already doing. Please make sure your microphones are muted during the presentation to avoid background noises. When you want to speak, please feel free to use an emoji to raise your hands, and then you'll be allowed to speak. And also during the session, please feel free to drop any questions or comments in the chat box. And please know that this session is recorded and we'll be sharing the recording with everyone after the webinar series. So to move up to the next stage, we'll be calling on Enegbe Opaolukwa, the head of natural resource and climate governance at Budget Foundation, to set the tone for this conversation today. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Enegbe.
Thank you very much, Alice. Also, I appreciate everyone for joining us today. This is the third webinar in our four-part webinar series. I thank you for taking the time from your busy schedules to join us to discuss this very crucial and important discussion. Please, can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me clearly, just to confirm I'm being heard? Okay, right. Thank you very much. All right. So this is a very crucial conversation, I think, because I know there are a lot of us here who participate in this space of development, climate action, renewable energy, sustainability development, economic recovery. And we feel that there are certain skills that are necessary. This is not the first time we are addressing a topic like this, but we feel it's something that is necessary to be had over and over again, and also create more opportunities for people and CSOs to benefit from this kind of conversations and this kind of capacity development. Basically, we have an agenda, we have a vision, we have goals as civil society organizations, and basically, how do we take those goals from the regular or our conventional system of approach to eliciting action, or how do we transfer our goals to action, and how do we yield the best results through the various tools available, including partners, media, community engagement. And I think this is a very relevant conversation, because in as much as we have very, very good intentions, until we can translate those intentions to meaningful action, then our job is not yet done. And I think we have one of the best people to address this topic today. And our facilitator, Mr. Nicholas Adeniyi, will be taking us through this session today. And I look forward to hearing from him and learning a lot today. Thank you once again for joining us. Without wasting too much time, I will transfer back to Ali so that we can proceed. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Inebe. As we all know, it's very important. Yes, advocacy is very important, but we also need to move from advocacy to action as drivers. I mean, as being main drivers of energy access in not just Nigeria, but also Africa. So our facilitator today is Mr. Nicholas Adeniyi, is a research and policy officer at the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, that's CJID. Is a development and practitioner, researcher, and communications strategist with over 8 years of experience advancing environmental governance, climate action, media development, and public policy across Africa. At CGID, it leads initiatives strengthening climate journalism, environmental accountability, and civic participation through research, advocacy, and stakeholders' engagement. He's a 2024 Fellow of the Journalism AI Fellowship and has coordinated multi-country projects, produced policy-relevant research, and trained journalists and civil society actors on climate governance, investigative reporting, and sustainable development. Mr. Nicholas, the floor is yours. So thank you all, and please feel free to push back, provide comments, or any question during the course of the capacity building webinar. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining once again. And over to you, Mr. Nicholas. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Please, could you confirm if you can hear me? And also, if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Do I have to show my face?
Yes, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay. I think I'm familiar with Zoom Meets video option. Okay. Yeah, but you can see me and you can see my screen as well, right?
Yes, please, we can. Please go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so once again, good morning, and thank you, Budget, for this opportunity to share the little that I know in your space. Yeah. So today's topic, advocacy to action, CSOs as well as community energy is. I mean, the topic cannot be emphasized. Civil society organizations have done a lot of work, but the energy space in Africa, in Nigeria, is still far from where it should be if you put it side by side along with other countries. So we'll just go into it. Most of what you'll be hearing from me today are things you already know. I do not think that you need anybody to come tell you what advocacy is. I also think that we all know what actions are, but sometimes in the course of our work, we could find ourselves struggling to struggling to find the balance between how we should approach these issues, separating advocacy from action. But advocacy in itself is a series of actions, so they are not entirely a different thing. So within advocacy, it requires you to take so to take a lot of steps that would eventually lead to a social change, which are actionable steps. But in the context of today, because society is changing, the way things are happening, the way things that have happened have been evolving. Also, there needs to be a rethink, a retweak, and in vision in respect to how we deploy our advocacy work. So yeah, so in Nigeria, going away from the broader context of Africa, Africa has 1.2 billion people. I like to look at issues from an African lens, then try to narrow it down. So Forgive me if you hear me talk about Africa. Yeah, so but from the continental lens, Africa is way behind in respect to the energy crisis in the world. So while energy is a big deal in the world globally, Africa is like way far behind from where every other person is even trying to solve a problem. And some of the narrative you get is like 1.2 billion people on the continent, and around 500 million do not even have access to electricity at all. 800 millions do not have access to clean energy, So all of these, and when you come down to Nigeria, you hear that 50% of Nigeria are self-generating their energy, or 82 million or thereabouts do not have access to electricity. I personally know communities that spent 5 years without 3 years without electricity. While I was an undergraduate in the community where I lived, throughout my undergraduate, I did not see electricity at all at any time if I'm not inside the campus. And it had been so 6 years before I became a student until now, it is still the same. So it's for more than 10 years, more than 15 years now. These communities do not have access to electricity, and people live there. You get so it's a big deal. And if we start to list out the problem, we could be on maybe 2000 a list of 2000 different problems around what is befalling this sector. But the energy sector in itself is very complex. It's a very complex sector, and I'm grateful that this webinar has narrowed it down to the electricity area. So on the screen, these are some of the systemic issues. There are a lot of them, but these are some of the systemic issues: lack of funding. If you still want to start talking about it, these are some of the things you find: lack of financing, weak or fragmented regulation, electricity tariff issue, infrastructural deficit, and all of that. And what impact do they have? Their impact is either if you solve it or if they don't solve it, it's either you lose public trust or you gain public trust. It's either make policy unattractive or it makes policy to be acceptable, and it's either it's investment decisions or it attracts foreign or direct investment both by private sector within the country and also players from outside of the country, which we call FDIs. So now these are just like the background around some of the issues that we'll be speaking to today. Yeah, so like I said, advocacy is what we do. Everybody here probably who is listening to me now, in one way or the other, have carried out advocacy. Even folks who do not work in the civil society space have done advocacy at one point or the other. If something, a community association of landlords is a civil society group in its own right, and when something is not okay, you see them gather together, right, to the government that they need a transformer, that they are going to do this and government should do that. All of this is a form of advocacy. When I engage with younger audience, when I visit campuses and all of that, I try to explain it in the sense that advocacy is that thing that a man would do to convince a woman to marry him, right? You tell her you will do this, you will do that. And then she will in turn say that, okay, I'm going to marry you or go to court, and which is like to make a policy to become a law, right? You have to make it legally binding. So that's everything you've said you will do it. If you don't do it, I'll divorce you. You get so I mean, in a more formal context is everything around advocacy, from policy influence, stakeholder engagement, community dialogue, colloquiums, knowledge production, research, policy brief. All of this is aimed at one thing to sorry is aimed at one thing to call for a social change, and that is what advocacy is. Yeah, so I'm not going to beat too much around it. We'll just go straight to the next slide. Yeah, so now before we go into the topic itself, let's just look at the energy ecosystem in Nigeria. So if someone else is presenting this, they probably would come up with a more a different organogram of what the sector looks like. But I want to make it very simple. So I grouped it in the centralized sector and the decentralized sector. We all know this already. Decentralized is the sector that is like heavily governed, whereby we have the GenCos who are generating company. They are private players, but they work very closely with the government. And everything they do is within the framework of what is allowed, what is sustainable, and what is needed. Then there are the transmission company, which is mostly the government and the NISO. Then you have the distribution companies, the DISCOs. So these are the centralized sector that is regulated, well regulated. Then there is the decentralized sector, also regulated, but not so regulated. And this sector have played the most role. This sector is the reason why we are having this topic, why we're having this conversation here, because the sector has provided more electricity than the centralized sector. So that is particularly the self-generation. Most Nigerians, virtually everybody in Nigeria have one way or the other that they have been able to generate electricity for themselves. And so we talk about generators, which is the most popular. We talk about solar panels, solar inverters, and even power banks. And so these are a lot of individuals use it in their homes, organizations use it in their offices, and small scale businesses, SMEs, they all use this, they all generate their electricity through the sector, and they are not regulated. So you see some of them are not environmentally friendly. We've seen cases where people die in their homes because they put on generator in the wrong place and all of that. We've seen where people get electricity. I mean, a lot of issues, but this is the sector that has been driving the over 1 billion SME economy in Nigeria. Yeah, so then there is the mini grid. Now, a lot of communities are situated very, very far away from town, from cities. And the way the electricity system works, that if you are transporting electricity through the wires from a very far place, before they get to where they are going to, it's a lot of energy shedding, and the amount of electricity that was generated is not what is received by the community, which is a problem, right? And that's one of the issues that the GenCos and the DISCOs are also having, among others. Then there's the interconnected mini grid, which is so-called the IMGs. So this is more like a is a new and emerging sector, which I think in Nigeria, in some parts of Lagos, we now have that. This is basically some organizations generating electricity either through biomass or through solar farms, but they do not sell to the consumer. Instead, they sell to the transmission company or the distribution, as the case may be, and just to augment it. So that helps to augment the amount of energy that gets to a particular place. We would see more of this, and some of our conversation today would also point at that, which is basically more like a social enterprise, I would call it, because some of them are strictly for profit, while others are not for profit, and that is where we now talk about what NGOs can do in respect to action, but we'll get there. So now the third part is the policy side, and that is where the civil society organization has played some incredible role over the years. We've seen a lot of change over the years. I mean, the sector eroded, but we are beginning to see it is getting better, and it is getting better. And everything here, both the decentralized and decentralized, is only able to happen because of the availability of policies, and we believe that they can get better. So now, this is just a pictorial view of the ecosystem. So let's go. Let's now go into the topic proper. So when we talk about advocacy, it is everything around supporting a particular cause and protecting the rights of people and amplifying the issues and all of that. So, but what we've been doing all these years has mostly been around these things, and civil society organizations have actually done a lot, and they made a lot of progress. They made a lot of impact. without civil society organization, I don't think that we would be where we are today. If you go to different sectors, to speak on different sectors of the economy, from food, from health, from energy, we won't be where we are today. So civil society organizations have done a lot of things. And what you do, if you ask anybody who is a social impact person, they will tell you they've done advocacy. They'll tell you they've created awareness, more people know, and they'll tell you they've been able to hold government accountable, hold individuals accountable, hold corporations accountable, and we now have a more transparent society. Maybe not, it is arguable, but it is better than what it was during the military era, right? Which are all as an outcome of what civil society organizations are doing. But because the society is changing, things are changing, the approach at which resources are being moved from one end to the other is changing. We cannot say we've achieved it all, right? There's still so much to do. There's still so much to do. If you open the pages of newspaper, you still see a lot of problems. But civil society organizations that are working around the clock to continue to do what they do. So now, how can we now move from this type of advocacy where we are holding dialogues, where we are doing peaceful demonstration, there are different forms of it. There is digital campaign, there is offline campaigns, there is stakeholder engagement, colloquiums, and all of that. So how can we move from there to a place where our work, our outcome, or the strategy at which we deploy what we do is more concrete and is actionable, and this would take us to the next slide. So I want to look at it in this sense. But before we go to this slide, so there are a lot of organizations that do a lot of things. So now I want us to take a seat, take a back seat, and look at what you do currently. So you do advocacy, awareness, accountability, and so much more. So if you want to turn that into action, what do you do differently, right? It's a $1 billion question. What do you do differently? I want to use 3 organizations as an example, just as a reference point, and I will be mentioning them as we go on. I'll use Budget, I'll use CJID, and I'll use Yaga Africa. And it's because they all work in peculiar, their strategy is peculiar, but the goal is to consolidate democracy. Consolidate democracy and accelerate development, sustainable development. So budget, for example, does a lot of things. But if you, from my own point of view and point of view of a lot of people that do not work in budget, you would see that budget has done so much work when it comes to tracking the problematic numbers. So tracking problematic numbers in budgets, those things that are eating that a lot of people may not really pay attention to understand that why do we have energy deficit, and this is the reason, because this place they say they commission the past social numbers, some amount of money, some amount of resources that we expended, but this is what is getting. Yeah, this is what it means because it is hidden in these numbers, and they've been able to simplify it. And if you check a lot of the product that budget puts out, if you go to their web page or their social media handles, you see all of these things, and it helps you to just understand the issue, right? If you take off CGID, what will come to mind is some investigative reporting organization, but what they really do is monitoring, on ground monitoring and verification. That is what journalists go to the field to do. So while that is broad, they actually travel to where these things are. So if budget have found some things in some numbers, they send people to go there to look at it and verify it if it is there, if it is not there, and then turn it into news report. And the third organization I want to mention is Yaga Africa, which work around election, which is also something very distinct. And how do they come about this? They track manifesto, they track elections processes to ensure that it is credible. So we've seen that their work has also had some impact over the years, where you've now seen some electoral reforms. Now we have youths who can now run for electoral offices, and then we've seen that election systems have changed. The process at which elections are now being being manipulated is through vote buying, as opposed to be back in the day when they could actually carry ballot and nothing would happen. Now, a lot of organizations do these things that I just mentioned. What Budget is doing, a lot of other organizations are doing it. What Sejari is doing, so many other organizations are doing it. But what is different is that every organization has its unique approach and strategy, and that's your strategy now is what makes you to be unique and why people trust you. So if budget posts something on their handle, the question is, will people trust what budget has presented? If they put something on their handle, on their page or on their website, will people trust it? Yes, because they've done so much work over the years. Now, the advocacy, the success of what the civil society space in general, what they have, the biggest leverage they have is the trust. Now, if you have trust, how can you turn your trust into action? And what makes your work unique? And that's where we go to that the next slide, which is product thinking. So, because to do something different out of what you do already, since what you do has a lot of action in it, and you need that concrete action, the type that can attract what you want, that can attract the kind of resources to solve the problem. Remember, we are talking within the context of the energy sector, which is different from, say, maybe they are passing a law to stop sexual, gender-based violence. It's different. The energy sector is a very peculiar sector that requires a lot of infrastructure. If we don't have infrastructure, then we've not done anything. If we do a lot of talking and there are no infrastructure is developed, you've not done anything. So now, since we know that what civil society organization, the biggest strength civil society organizations have is trust, right? But you have a strategy around how you've been able to buy the trust of people, buy the trust of stakeholders, buy the trust of the government, of development partners, and all you get. So now, how can you turn what do you have? What do you have that is unique? Which is product thinking. I think that civil society organizations or development in the individuals that work in the development space generally are not particularly, regardless of whether you're a big organization or you're a startup, you should design your strategies to a product. Like it has to be a product. And if it is a product now, ask yourself these questions: who will buy it? So if you have your strategy, if there is a conference somewhere, think about it in this way. If there is a conference somewhere and you have a booth and you're presenting what you do, would people stop to check out what you do? Would people stop to come and check you out? If you have a plaza, a mall, and there's a show glass, that inside that show glass is your product, or a big shop that has a glass opening, that there's a product showing what you do. If people pass by it, will they stop to check it out? Will they go inside? If they go inside, will they buy your product? If they don't buy your product, why are they not buying it? And if they buy your product, why did they buy it? So it is important that we coin our strategy, we frame our strategy in a way that it is as if you are selling a product. And I believe that, and that is how we can move from advocacy to action. I'm going to break it down in the next slide, but your product would, because your trust already appeal to the people, and the people buying your accepting whatever advocacy effort you are bringing to them is what leads to impact, right? But imagine if it is a product, that it is the product that people actually, what they can actually see and what they can feel and what they can use. Whether it is their investors, whether they are investors, whether it's government, whether it's the community whom we are aiming at solving the problem for, and or if they can see a problem, what would happen, which is going to be the outcome, and what would be the impact at the end of the day. So now let's take a back seat and think about it. And now you may begin to imagine all what you do. Before now, what organizations do is mostly what I mentioned earlier. We have civic advocacy, a lot of civic advocacy tools. I think Budget has quite some civic advocacy tools. I see that there is Data Fight in the core. I've interacted with a lot of their civic advocacy tools. CGID has a lot of those too. A lot of organizations have developed these things. We have stakeholder dialogue every now and then. There is a conference, people talk, panel discussion. There sometimes they do peaceful demonstration, and all of these things are what we do monitoring, we do verification, but is it a product? Is it sellable? Can it be sold to somebody, whether they are paying with money or they are paying with something else? Can it be sold? We need to, especially when you are working in the energy sector, whatever it is you are doing, your trust should be able to attract buyers for your product. So you've established that what you've been doing over the years has given you credibility and you are trusted. Now, all those things that you are coming up with, can it be sold? And this is why I kind of break it down sorry, I need to move this. Right. Okay. Yeah. I need to see my face. Sorry. Yeah. So kind of like break it down into these six pillars. Now, many organizations produce knowledge products, policy brief, research, toolkits, all of those things. In the context of the energy space, the kind of research that you put out, can it influence some investors? Is it beneficial to people who are looking to invest in the energy sector? As opposed to just doing the research product that talk about the period, does it have does it have recommendations? Does it have the kind of content that if I am an investor, I would find it really insightful, that I know for sure that if I put in my money in building a mini grid or investing in an IMG grid, would this product benefit me? Would I find it insightful? Can I look at Budget and say, oh, Budget, I want you guys to take this funds and develop a research for us around this particular issue, because we are looking to come in. We've seen what you've done before. We like it, and this is what we want to do. Please help us, because you are development partners. When you go to the community will talk to you. And that's where. And that calls for the need whereby if you are looking to work in the energy sector, you need to think your product like a social enterprise, right? It is not for profits. It is not for profit. So when you hear me say, product, I'm not saying that you are making profits. But think about it in a social enterprise. Can they reach out to you? Can they find the kind of research product that you do? Can they find it it's so interesting that development partners would be willing to deploy resources through you to carry out this work that you do, to advance the work that you do with organizations? Because now there's an advocacy going on for environmental impact assessment, whereby there's a part of it that requires for a dialogue between the community, the host community, and the mining company or whoever is coming to implement a project in that area. Can it be outsourced to your organization to say, come and help us handle this, because the people trust you and we also trust you. We believe that if you are there, because they are out to make profits, and if we believe that if you are part of this project, everything will go well with us, because we want to do this. We know that we are going to try our best to not do anything contrary to what the law says, because that is what civil society stands for, really, right? So I don't want to explain the details of each of these pillars, but I'm using the first one as an example. Can the government, let me use the AI collective project as a reference. CGID is currently the secretariat for that. and it is basically looking at AI policy in Nigeria. CID on its own develop AI tools and all of that, but there needs to also be we need to like ensure that that sector is not stifled by policies that are not inclusive, policies that are not equitable, and the government see what CID is doing, they trust, and they feel like, okay, we believe that since you are doing it, and let's work with you and let's see how we can get this thing done. So now, if your project, if your ideas, your products are, if you design your product um to be sellable, to be attractive, right? You get the buy-in of every stakeholder, the government, the funders, the investors, and the community that are going to be adopting it. So now, if this all of these six stacks, the project incubator, before I go into it, and not to complicate what we are always saying, think of what you do, think of yourself as a player in the sector who is a facilitator, right? You are a facilitator for change, you are a facilitator for innovation. You are a facilitator for development, and you are in whatever you do. The work that you do is an enabler. You get, so the action, your advocacy now. Let's turn it into action that enables the change that we are aiming at. The goal, the goal of your project, ensure that the project itself enables that goal. What the strategy, the step by step, those tiny bits of how you want to go about it. So if organizations that does project incubation, like Clean Tech Hub, there is a Nigerian Climate Innovation Hub also, there are a host of other organizations that develop projects, they start a project and they now hand it over to community. I know some guys in northern Nigeria that does hydroponics for agriculture. They help farmers to do farming that does not need so much water. You get, and when you do this, they hand it over. You get, so they are enablers, and that is attractive. So in the energy sector, what initiative can you do? The first one that I try to like go in detail is mostly what, like, for example, Budget has a lot of data around energy. So this data, can it be attractive to an investor? Somebody who is trying to invest, somebody in Netherlands or somebody in China who wants to come and invest some of their $1 trillion in Nigeria, can they find a data in what you've done that would be relevant that will inform their investment decision? You get, so for project incubators to make sure they let your project incubate projects within your strategy that can attract funding, right? Then project implementation partner, like I mentioned earlier, the AI collective thing, and there are a lot of other. A very simple, a typical example of this is the IETI initiative, which in Nigeria we have NEITI, whereby for the NEITI to stand, there needs to be civil society on the board, and the presence of the civil society in NEITI is why NEITI has been making a lot of progress. If they keep getting better every year, you get. So funders understand that where civil society stands, there is trust. You get. So, but do you position yourself? The kind of actions you take, the kind of decisions you take, does it allow you to be someone that does it allow your initiative to be one that they want to be associated with what they are doing, like what they want to associate with you, because they know that once they stand with you, once they're implementing the project and you are involved in this project, everything will go well. Everything will go well as long as they are not. Nobody is going to the back to change figures. Nobody is going to the back to lie and all of that. And technology enabler, investment facilitator. This is big in the climate energy sector. This is like any idea you are bringing up has to be bankable. If it is not bankable, then you can't attract investment. It is just a summary of everything that I'm saying. And then for organizations that work at the grassroots for behavioral change, but that's what we've had a lot of success in this regard, right? And I'm going to go deep into it. We've had a lot of success when it comes to behavioral change. You get, but people have changed their behaviors, but people are not seeing resources come in to complement that change in behavior, because usually it is easy to do the things that are wrong. You get, and when you are now doing the right things, they usually come. It usually come with some kind of friction. You get, so when people change and they are willing to go on through that friction, is your project, it is you who has introduced them to this. Can you help them to attract? Can that initiative that you've introduced them to, that they've adopted, that you've counted as an impact, can it attract resources to help them to scale? You get, so and yeah. So now when you do this, to measure impact and also to just track what you do to be sure that you are doing the right thing, then you ask these 5 questions. I think these 5 questions are very simple questions that every project person that works in the energy space would ask. If at the end of the whole thing you've come up with an idea, you've come up with an advocacy, you've taken action, you've taken different steps, if at the end of the day, is the energy available? Like, have people been able to access it? Can they see the energy? Is the energy even available at all? Is it beyond just talking and designing, writing policy brief and all of those things? Is the energy available? If it is available, is it accessible? Can people buy it? I think that's the conversation around the band A, band B, and all of that. You get, can people afford it? If I believe, without, if civil society were not involved in the conversation around the what led to the bans, everybody would be on band A. Every Nigeria, whether you have electricity or not. I know at some point I wasn't having the 24 hours, so to say, but I was on band A. I was on band A, and it was not funny until when there was a lot of advocacy, and then it was changed to band B, right? Because there was no way I will be getting 24-hour electricity where I stay anyway. You get, so yeah. So then it's scalable, which is very important. If we come up with an initiative and all, is it going to last the test of time? How many years are we talking about? So these are very important questions that every project manager should ask themselves. And then to measure your success, usually we would measure success by the number of participants. We measure success by the number of people who adopt something, who adopt what our initiative, number of workshops we've had, the policy brief, number of downloads, and all of those things. But those are very important also. But can you just can we make it more like, let's box it into something more tangible, and around, let's put it around, I like to use the word trust, because it is the biggest, it is the most expensive, it is the cheapest asset that you cannot buy, right? If what you do people don't have trust in what you do, then there is no point in calling yourself a civil rights activist or civil rights advocate. Okay, so your project must be embraced, and your idea, your initiative must solve problem from the bottom right to the top. It must promote good governance. We've done a lot of work in holding government accountable, in calling for more transparency and all of this. So it's important, that we are able to measure success using these metrics. Then finance in the energy space, it's everything is around infrastructure, and if infrastructures are expensive, they are not cheap. So your project must be able to must be bankable, must be able to attract finance from the right players. Then technical capacity. How many people have we trained? Does the project train the community people to be able to train other people, that if you leave the project behind, can these people manage it themselves? Do they know what to do when there is a glitch? Do they know where to get the resources that will help them to fix the problem, and all of these things. So these are very important. And for us to do this, we need to start to coin our project to what is to be towards something that looks more like a social enterprise, whereby it is able to attract the resources that will help it to continue. You can't be in the energy sector and rely on just grants and say grants to train people and or it needs to be able to solve the problem of the people. And I believe that if we take it through the steps that I have highlighted so far, we would be able to drive that action that we are aiming at. And not to forget that advocacy in itself is embedded with series of actions, but the kind of action you take in respect to energy is not the same when you are doing a more social socially a social project like SGBG and all of that. So I have this quote which I say that the future of civil society in the energy sector will not be defined by the number of policy briefs we write, but the number of communities whose lives improves because we transform ideas into action. So on my final notes, I try to make this session very brief. I don't know if it's okay, but my final note is that the most valuable assets that we possess is trust, and our trust must be able to be turned into a product, and that product is a strategy of how we work, and that strategy has to be bankable, and if it is bankable, the government because the government have legitimacy, everybody know that private sectors has capital and development practitioners have resources, but community needs to trust us, and it is the presence of a civil society in any community that should be able to attract all of this. That should be able to attract all of this, should be able to attract government intervention, should be able to attract private sector capital, and it should be able to attract development partners and resources. Yeah. So I also like to say that trust enables communities to accept projects. So you need to turn trust into a product, and your product is the strategy at which you are trying to use to solve this problem. So if you change your strategy into a product that is sellable, that is attractive, that if you go to a conference, if there is a conference somewhere in Nigeria, somewhere outside Nigeria, and you have a booth, and people are able to come into your booth to see what you do, if they go through what you've done, they should be able to see something that interests them, that make them to want to work with you. And these steps, the actions that you take to get there are exactly what it takes to solve maybe not exactly, but they are enough to solve or to augment or to consolidate the energy deficits that we have in Nigeria. So I would be happy to take questions and feedback here. Yeah, and if anyone is not able to share their questions just yet, they can also send me an email. By the way, this email is not
Yes.
correct. There's should be
Thank you so
NIC.
much. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for that insightful presentation. One of the key things I got was that the future of CSO in the energy sector will not be defined by the numbers of policy brief that we write, right? But the number of communities that will be able to impact, right, and improve their lives. So thank you so much for that insight as well. So thank you everyone so much for joining once again. So it's time for questions, comments. Please, if you have any question, please raise your hand up. But before that, I think I have questions from my end, right? My question will be around the funding landscape that has changed within the civil society organization, right? And that, aside that we've seen CSOs currently engaging with community members. Community members actually trust them, and we've seen a number of mini grids, for example, deployed to different unserved and underserved and unserved communities in Nigeria, right? When you go to the River Education Agency, for example, they will give you the numbers of these solutions that have been deployed, and right now they are engaging with different stakeholders. But when you get there, CSOs are not actually fully engaged, right? So, do you think the government's what tricks do you think the government see in actually bringing CSOs in as implementers, and what institutional and maybe financial barrier currently keep CSOs as formally being implementation partners in the deployment of these solutions to unserved and underserved communities? Thank you.
Sorry, could you repeat the first part of the question?
Okay, so my question is around one, I said the policy and the funding landscape has changed, right? You agree with me, right? And
Yes.
a lot of CSOs currently engage with community members, right? But then it's majorly around advocacy. So my first question is, what risk do you think the government see in bringing CSOs into actual delivery of these solutions in unserved and underserved communities, right? And my second question is, what institutional or maybe financial barrier currently keep CSOs from being implementation partners? Thank you.
Okay, so for the first part of the question, I think it is we cannot relate to it. So the risk for the government is basically or is simply what we do. So organizations, a lot of organizations do monitoring and verification, and and that's basically holding government accountable, showing out what they do. So while I'm not saying that governments set out to not do what they are supposed to do, right? But they sometimes they don't feel very comfortable knowing that that the integrity of the projects would be exposed in terms of the financing, the resources, how they deploy the resources, and all of this. You get so I feel like that's it's scary. I've had opportunities where we collaborate with government institutions on all of the on some of these type of projects, and when it comes to well, showing, putting out what we do to present what we do, mentioning what they've done wrong, they don't usually feel very comfortable at it. And I don't think it is possible for society organizations to see what is wrong and turn a blind eye. And I think that that is the risk for them, you get. And it takes a very sincere administration that like I also mentioned in Haiti, in Haiti, for example, they don't have a choice whether they like it or not. The requirement for that agency to be established, for that MD to be established, is that it has to work with civil society, and so they just have to play around that. So I think that it is a work in progress. When we have more of this type of institution, then the government will see the benefits that at the end of the day, partnering with civil society does not really stop, does not mean that you can't. In fact, you make more money, right? And all of these institutions like REA is currently trying to do that. They've been reaching out to some organizations to be a part of what they do. You get, but it is still, the process is still not, it's still they're not still like very open the way you would have expected it to be. But I think it's a work in progress, and the risk is because they are not quite comfortable with how civil society operates in respect to showing what I mean. The civil society would monitor, verify, and we show it to the to Nigerians that this is what we found. So when we get to that bridge, I think we will see more. Then also on the part of civil society organizations, I don't know. I wouldn't say that organizations are not doing what they are not doing very well. Everyone is doing some incredible job, and they should only get better at it. You get so maybe at the institutional level, there will be a different type of conversation on how to engage how to engage the government from the leadership of organizations to make government feel comfortable, to make them understand that civil society organizations are not house to which owns the government, but we are only here for as development partners. And if you do this thing well, you are going to benefit from it. Just to make them see the benefit of we need to start to make them to see the benefit of working with the civil society. And right, and that is where I talk about product thinking. So if you create your product, your knowledge products, your policy brief, all of these things, if they are very beneficial to the government, and it's like you have done their work for them, and it's for them to just pick it and lift it up and implement it, they will be willing to work with us. So I still think that we still dwell heavily on problems. And the government naturally try to run away from problem. Government is very optimistic. They are always very optimistic, and it looks like society side sometimes it looks like we are very pessimistic. So we need to create our strategy to look like a product that is attractive. You get the kind of data we are putting out has to be attractive. I think we saw that. Then for the financing side also, yeah. So this is where I highlighted earlier that ideas should incorporate some kind of social enterprise, because since the past 2 years, I think for the past 2 or 3 years, the largest chunk of funding for energy transition has been channeled to projects that are bankable. They've been channeled to projects that is scalable. Like if they give you this money, if you receive this maybe $1 million or 500K, you can turn it into 10 million in maybe 5, 10 years. You get so these initiatives like that have received more funding than initiatives that just dwell on organizing panel sessions, stakeholder engagement, and all of that. So we just need to create whatever it is we do. Let us turn it into a product. You get what you do now. Just turn it into a product that would attract funding. I believe I've been able to answer that question.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Nicholas. I love the aspect of the social enterprise that you mentioned, because it's not enough to just go ahead with advocacy, writing policy brief. Things are changing, and as they change, we need to continue to evolve as civil society organizations so that we don't shut down, right? So thank you so much for that. So we have some questions in the chat. I'll go ahead to read the first one from Mr. Kenny. He said, my research adopts an energy realist perspective, which argues that successful community energy is not simply about installing infrastructure, but about ensuring that it is available, accessible, affordable, reliable, and scalable. From your experience, how can civil society organizations influence these 5 dimensions to move community energy projects from advocacy to long-term sustainability? Thank you. Over to you, Nicholas.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned it. I think I have something like that, and I mentioned it earlier. When we talk of energy is expensive. Energy is not cheap, and that is also why I say sometimes I feel like Nigeria is one of the best countries in the world, if not because leaders choose to put us where they've put us. You get energy is very cheap in Nigeria until maybe now. It is still very cheap, even now. You get and the infrastructure that it takes to give to provide energy is very expensive, right? And it requires infrastructure. Without infrastructure, you can't have energy. So, but the way to make it long term, like I mentioned earlier, is to localize whatever it is you are bringing. So it has different dimension. And let us go away from what we are now to education. It starts from education. First of all, people need to understand the technology and how to interact with this technology. You get, so you would see a lot of learned people. If you go to their homes, they have energy saver, everything energy saver, and they've been able to save more with that. You get. I was speaking to someone. I was speaking to someone yes 2 days ago about the cost of the amount they spend on electricity every month. And I was like, if I don't on my AC, like this period, I don't on it at all. I don't spend up to 5K a month. My fridge runs 247, and my television is almost always working if I'm in the house. You get, I don't off my bulbs and I just enjoy my life, right? But I don't spend up to 5K. And the person is moving to somewhere else and they're required to pay 30,000 naira every month for electricity. And I was like, I have good amount of light every day. I have at least 16 hours daily. You get. So the difference is that the kind of technology I use in my house are energy savers. Everything, my fridge is working 247, it is energy saver. You get, it doesn't use so much energy. So it starts from there. So if you are providing the technology to people, you need to teach the people how to, like, you need to make them understand the technology you are bringing to them, right? And you need to teach them how to interact with this. Then that's one side. The second side is that when you introduce a new technology, you need to create a local, you need to incentivize or to create a local economy around how to fix it if there is a problem. You get, let's use the EV cars, for example. It's a typical example of something in the energy that is solving the energy crisis, right? And the reason why a lot of people are not adopting electric vehicle in Nigeria is because if it has issues, there's nowhere to repair them. You get, even the people that claim to know how to repair them are still not quite there. You get, it's because we are bringing in technology that's going to solve the energy issue, so energy crisis. I mean, when you have electric cars, you don't need to go to the filling station because you could easily charge it in your house when you just buy the car with the power station. You get, you save a lot of money. You understand? But if that car has issues, I know a friend of mine whose mother owns a car like that, and since February till now, they've parked the car because there's no way to repair it. You get, so there needs to be a local economy that can fix the problem. If that can interact with that can fix that, that can use that technology technically, right? They can come around, fix anything that needs to be fixed. And when you do that, you need to scale it. You need to scale it. Where I live, if there is an issue with the transformer, it does not last maybe 2 hours, they fixed it because there are a lot of guys that has been trained on how to do that by the AEDC. So they work with the AEDC, but they are community, they are not staff, but they are like community folks who, whenever there's an issue that does not require serious intervention, they can just go there to do it. You get, that speaks to training and scaling up that training to make the trainer train the trainer. I believe if we have all of this, we'll be able to have a long-term scalability around how we interact with energy infrastructure.
All right, thank you so much, Nicholas. We have another question in the chat. Mr. Ken, I believe Mr. Nicholas has done justice to your question. All right, thank you. So I'll read out the second question from Mr. Mayowa. It said, can CSOs play the role of mobilizing financing for community energy? Personally, I would love to be part of such projects. Also, how can CSOs be positioned in a way to mitigate against hijack of community energy projects from state actors? Thank you. Over to Nicholas.
Okay, so the first one is if CSO can mobilize fund, right? Right?
Yes, please. How can they mobilize funds
For community.
for community
Then
energy?
the second one is what is Sorry, I didn't
How can
register.
CSOs be positioned in a way to mitigate against hijack of community energy projects from state actors?
Okay. Yeah. So let me start with the second one. It is ownership. There is an agency of government that I found out I think sometime around 2017, Fiscal Responsibility Commission. And when the DG of that agency was speaking, he was talking about how what they do is to hand over projects to community, that whatever any project government does, they hand it over to the community, belongs to the community. So if they install a transformer somewhere, they hand it over to the community, and that is what they do. So they work with the community to own projects, you get. But it is the community. We've seen a lot of street lights in Abuja here that have been vandalized because some people remove some of the equipment, some of the bulbs, some of the metal. You get, if you go by the bridge and all of this, like they did before the new track was constructed. You see they removed it. If you check on the manhole in town here, everything has been vandalized. They've removed it. They've stolen it. All the metal, you get. So when I hear that big talk, I was just thinking about it in the sense that, so any project that is developed is supposed to be owned by the people. So it means the reason why it is owned by the people is so that people can protect it. But there is that gap, you get. And it is because until now or before now, civil society have not really been doing that. They've not really been working with the community to own projects, especially projects that are provided by the government. And this is where it is important for government to work with civil society organizations. Because government provide interventions, take it to the people and hand it over and leave. And the community thinks that it belongs to the government and they don't try to protect it. So for you to avoid that, which you've asked in this question, is to ensure that your strategy, the strategy at which you are trying to use to deploy your initiative, your project must be centered around community trust and community ownership. If the community does not own it, truly it's just a waste of time. You get, so whatever you are deploying, whatever technology that you are bringing, it has to be owned by the community. And how to achieve that is by ensuring that they see a benefit in it. For them to see a benefit in it, they need to know how to interact with it. So if they know how to interact with it, they see how it helps their life to be better. They see how it makes things easier for them. They see how it has enabled other things. It has enabled better health. It has better health outcomes. It has better economic outcomes for them. It has better security outcomes for them and all of that. Then they would see the need to protect this infrastructure. And then for the second question on mobilizing finance, yes, very much civil society organizations should, in fact, start considering positioning themselves to attract financing for community initiative. I was in Ghana last month and visited a biomass plant, an IMG mini grid. And what they do is they collect waste, so they solve problem of waste and also solve problem of energy deficit. So they go to a household, collect waste from people's toilets, sockaway, not toilets, and they collect industrial waste from all of these plants in the industrial part of Ghana, and they bring it to their plants, and they turn that waste, the biomass, they turn it into energy. Down the end product of the waste, they turn it into fertilizer and they sell it to farmers. You get, so it's a non-profit. It's a non-profit. So now the energy that is being generated, they sell to the government through the grid, and so they sell energy to the government. They sell fertilizers to farmers. Then they also collect waste from industrial wastes, which the industry also pay them for because they're like helping them to dispose of all of this waste. And it generates a lot of revenue from foreign, from investors from investors, from development partners, foreign aid now in this case, not for profit. You get, and this money is used to now carry out other initiatives. So the profit they are making from this, they use it to carry out other initiatives in communities that need them. You get, they use it to develop or other mini grids that are not connected to what they do, and use it to mobilize funds. And I mean, it is an interesting a strategy, which I think that organizations should begin to imbibe. I think some of them are in Lagos currently. We have some of them in Lagos and Ogun State, but I will be happy to see more organizations explore this, and that is what they call social enterprise. So very much civil society organizations can position themselves to attract funding for community projects. Because now, if you talk about climate change and energy transition, the largest chunk of the funds now, the funds that are available are funds for climate adaptation, and adaptation funds are infrastructural funds. They are not funds to create awareness anymore. Everybody already know the problem, so now it's time to act. Yeah, so I believe I've answered that question.
Yes, please. Thank you very much for your apt response. We have another question from Mr. Salami. I think he joined a little bit late. He wants to know the difference between advocacy and action.
Yeah, so yeah, okay, like you said, the journey is a bit late. So yeah, so advocacy and action are advocacy itself requires you to take a lot of action, and there is not so much of a difference between them. You get, so, but in this context, the reason why they've separated it to say advocacy and action is that we need to take action, that people can see that we are taking this action, and this action is why we have lights. You get, but in advocacy, advocacy is a broad term that describes a lot of things that you do to achieve a goal or a change. You get, before we have lights, now we no longer have lights. But everything you do in between that process is the actions that you are taking. You understand? So now the biggest action is that we add light now. We now have lights. So that's the biggest action. So advocacy to that big action. So everything you are doing from the ideation to you going for stakeholder engagement, talking, writing proposal, talking to investors, developing a research, collecting data, explaining data, interpreting the data, all of those requires you to take action. So the grand action that now puts everything together, that puts all the pieces together, is the action that we're talking about in this context. So they are not separated, they are interwoven. Advocacy as in itself is a series of actions. So many actions to lead to a change. So the action in this context, to my understanding, means that big the change that has happened is the action. You get, so how do we move from conceiving an idea to bringing that idea to life? You get, how do we think of want to build a stadium and actually having a big stadium that will last the test of time? Yeah, so that's what that is the difference between them. If there is a difference at all, the difference between them is what you consider and what you produce.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Nicholas. We do appreciate you for the very direct answer to the questions. So I think we have one more question from Mr. Razak Yinka. He said, since states are being given rights to generate and transmit their own electricity, how does CSOs come into making impacts on this project by the subnationals? I'll take that again. States have been given the right to generate and transmit their own electricity. So how can CSOs come in to make impact on some of these projects by the states? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So I think already CSOs have made impact, right? For the longest time, we've been talking about that, we've been clamoring that every state in Nigeria should be able to generate its own electricity, because it's only 24% of the electricity that is generated in Nigeria that are from some hydropower. The rest are either from a solar mini grid or from a power plant that uses gas. You get a gas-powered solar plant. So it is not so much of a big deal. You get, if you say it can be situated, the state government should be able to invest in this. And for the longest time, several states have tried, and because the policy does not allow them to do it, they've not been able to. So in fact, in some state like Akwa Ibom built a power plant that they could not generate electricity for themselves, and they had to like hand it over to the national at the time I think it was PHCN also. You get, so the work civil society organizations, civil society players in this sector, I think budget has done a lot of work around this, are doing, is even why we now have that, now that we have 6 states who now have the license, and who now have the jurisdiction to generate their own electricity, which is a big deal, which itself is a big deal, because if you consider that when electricity is generated here, before it will get to any destination you are sending it to, it will do a lot of shedding. That shedding is a waste of energy that nobody uses. You get, so instead of us generating electricity in Kaflancha, and you are sending it to Oshobo, or in Oshobo, and be sending it to Maiduguri, when you could just generate in Maiduguri for the people in Maiduguri. You get, so these are like policy that does not make sense, that that civil society organization have done a lot of work to ensure that we scrap those policies, and we improve it to ensure, to allow states with the resources to generate their own electricity. Did a research which we're just completing now to track investment in Africa, and there is a lot of investments, FDIs, on energy. Like in Africa and in Nigeria, there's been a lot of money. State governments have been able to attract a lot of foreign players who are interested in funding energy in the country, but because the policy does not exist that will allow them to say, okay, we the states, we are generating our own electricity, and we sell to our people at our own rates, based off on the economic situation of the people in this state. You get, they've not been able to do. So this policy is part of what civil society have done. They've canvassed for this, and we are still far from the goal, right? So that is how they've already been a part of this. And what they can do is to continue to knock on these doors, to ensure that it is inclusive, to ensure that it is equitable. So it is not enough that 6 states now have the right to do that. It is enough that it is affordable, right? It is accessible. People in all those very far part of the state can access it. Everybody should be able to access it. You get, so I believe that if we solve energy problem in Nigeria, especially for small scale businesses and small scale enterprise, we would reduce the cost of living, would be drastically reduced, and we would all achieve economic prosperity, and not be hoping to travel out of Nigeria to live better lives.
Wow. Thank you so much for doing justice to all of these questions. We do appreciate you for bringing richness to this very important conversation as we continue to evolve as civil society organizations. Just a few key points. Like I mentioned, like the facilitator mentioned earlier, that the future of CSO will not be defined by the numbers of policy briefs that we continue to write, but the lives that we impact through different communities that we engage with. So thank you so much, Mr. Nicholas. Please, any final word from you?
I mean, I didn't see that coming. Yeah, anyways, thanks so much for the opportunity to be on this webinar. I actually learned a lot, just trying to come up with a slide, and it's very enriching. And also to everyone who has been here, thank you so much. And I would urge us all, as we go back, to see how we can reposition our projects in our respective organization. So everything your organization is doing, just try to sit back and like list it out and see how you can begin to do things differently to ensure that every initiative is bankable, because the next big money is now going to finance is going to be gotten not from development. Trump has made us to see that the future of expecting grants grants may not be around for a very long time. So there need to be a new strategy on how to do this thing. And because organizations, the private players who have the biggest finance, by the way, have a social corporate responsibilities to support development. And because of that, they are willing to invest in bankable projects. So if you're working in the energy sector, make sure your projects are bankable. Whether it is if you are a knowledge producer, your research product should pick it and use it. You can use it to inform it is that you do. Just make sure that it is bankable. People should, if you are someone who provides direct service, make sure they can engage your organizations to carry out community dialogue. You get it. That is what you do. Whatever it is you do, make sure you position yourself in a way that is that you do. That's why I can hand the mic back to Madam Adeniyi.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Nicholas. I love what you mentioned. So sometimes progress means sitting back and doing a retrospect, right? And that is very important for us as CSOs at this stage. It's very important to do that and think of the next line of action. By then, we'll be able to turn advocacy into actionable plans and results. So we've come to the end of today's webinar. So on behalf of Budget and Resource Justice Network and of course CGID, I would like to invite our Head of Natural Resource and Climate Governance, Mr. Enebi, to give us the final remarks. And in addition, I'd also like to add that we have one more session coming up in 2 weeks. That is 15th of July, and we'll do well to keep you posted as well. Please, we've posted a link in the chat for you to fill the attendance. If you haven't, please do well to fill the attendance sheet. So I'll be calling on Mr. Enebi. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice, for moderating this session. I also want to thank Mr. Nicholas Adeniyi for a wonderful session. Really appreciate your efforts. Thank you to everyone who participated, who asked questions, who made contributions, who posted comments. We value your feedback and your contributions to this wonderful event. Like my colleague said, we still have one more session coming up in 2 weeks. That'll be the final of the 4 webinars that we've had so far over the last couple of weeks. I would do implore you to join us for that and also spread the word with your network as well. The link remains the same. And please, in a couple of days, we should have an update on who will be facilitating that session. I also want to permit me to recognize someone. He may not want me to mention, but I see his name somewhere on the list, Mr. Vincent Egoro. When we started this project on energy sustainability with public to pay, he was at a very start point with us, and he is also on the call here today. If it's okay with him, he can just say hello. He doesn't have to make a speech if he doesn't want to, but he can say hello. But all right, yeah, I can see his hands. Yeah, please. Thank you very much. We are glad to have you join us for today's session. It's been a wonderful time with you over the last 3 years. I think I will stop there for now. And I say thank you once again for joining us, and see you at the next webinar in 2 weeks. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Enebi. Thank you very much, Mr. Nicholas. And thank you very much, everyone, for spending your time with us today. And I hope you have a very beautiful day today. Bye for now, everyone.